Good afternoon. This is going to be the crew that's going to be my audience. Are we ready? All right, so I'm going to be talking a little bit about why you should buy a vehicle instead of leasing a vehicle, okay? So patience pays, right? Everyone wants to save money. So that's basically what you're going to do when you buy a vehicle. So according to the Business Insider, May 21st, 2018, leasing a vehicle is basically renting. So at the end of the lease, you're not going to be left with anything, right? So as far as loving a good deal, buying essentially is that. It might not appear that initially. Just keep it on me, don't keep any. But that's what it is. So we're going to go over a few things, basically talking on why buying is a good thing. So first off, it's an investment, it's ownership, and it's equity. All those things we'll kind of touch on later. So leasing initially seems like a great deal because you have a cheap price, you get a flashy new vehicle, but we'll go over the reasons why in the long run it's not. Buying might seem intimidating because you have a higher price, 5 or 6 years, and then you're going to be committed for that vehicle for a long time. So ownership, some numbers, and then at the end what it's like to have your vehicle paid off. So we'll kind of hit a few things like that. So freedom to use a vehicle, what exactly does that mean? So when you own a vehicle, you get to use the vehicle, as simple as it sounds, right? The consumer website reports that leasing a vehicle, essentially right now, the miles that you get when you lease a vehicle, they start at about 10 to 12,000, depending on what you negotiate, and then there's penalties. So what are those penalties? So basically at the end of your lease, when you're done, for mileage alone, you're going to be required to pay a certain fee for every mile that you go over. The Daytona News Journal online cited that consumers pay about 20 cents for every mile they go over. So let's do some simple math. We'll say that you agree to a lease for 3 years. You get 10,000 miles a year, but hardly anyone really drives 10,000. I think it's more like 15 or 20. Just for simplicity, we'll say you drove 20,000 miles every year. So at the end of the 3 years, that's 60,000 miles, right? So 60,000 times 20 cents, that's $6,000 that you're going to owe at the end of your lease for going over 30,000 miles. So that doesn't even include the wear and tear on the tires that you might have to pay for. If you have any dings in it, you got some, whatever it is, all those penalties will all add up, and then you're going to be required to pay that. If you don't want to pay that, well, you can buy the vehicle at a price that they're not going to negotiate with you. It's going to be a fixed price, and at the end you might not want that vehicle anyway, but you'll be stuck with either the penalties or that vehicle, right? So on top of that, at the end of the lease, you're going to be left with nothing. Whereas if you buy a vehicle, you've got some equity, you've got something you can trade, and then you won't have a payment at the end, right? So again, leasing, on the surface it looks cheaper, but in the long run it's going to be more expensive. Also, like insurance, a simple thing like that. Like if you lease a vehicle, you're required to have like the highest coverage like for any vehicle because you're protecting someone else's investment. Whereas if you buy a used car and you don't mind if it gets beat up, you can get whatever tailors you. You know, fit that insurance to tailor to whatever fits your needs. You know, you can pay for cheap insurance because you don't care about it getting beat up. According to Credit Karma, April 2018, buying a used car and keeping it for a few years is basically the best way to go. And again, I already talked about those reasons. When you're done paying off the vehicle, you can save money for a few years, right? After you're done saving money, you can sell the vehicle. I mean, I think Green does that, right? I mean, does anyone in here own a vehicle? Does anyone here lease? I don't believe you, Green. I think everyone here owns a vehicle.
Do both.
So, you do both? Okay, so hopefully after this speech you'll see the reasons why you should just own a vehicle and not lease, right? So again, the Balance website states that again, leases are cheaper in the short term, but in the long term you're going to be paying more. And why is that? Because it's cyclical. So you pay off your, Green, at the end of your lease, what are you left with?
What do you mean?
Well, what do you have at the end of the lease?
No, I mean nothing.
Nothing, right? Exactly. So you don't have anything at the end of the lease. But when you're done paying off your loan, what do you have? Your car, right? And you can do with it whatever you want. So I've basically gone over a few simple things on why you should buy a vehicle, which all of you do. We have one person that leases and buys, which is kind of interesting. But again, it's a pretty smart thing to do. You're going to save money in the long run. So essentially, be patient, buy a vehicle, and in the long run, it's going to pay off. Don't be misled into these flashy new vehicles with all the bells and whistles and the perception of a low payment. Because in the long run, when the lease is done, you're going to be left with nothing. Thanks for your time.